Today, I'm going to show you the safe and proper way to convert your Limitorque MXa electric actuator into an MXB electric actuator. It is important to note that before starting this procedure, you will need to be able to open and close the valve. If your process does not allow for this, wait until you are able to stroke the valve open and close. These are the recommended tools and PPE required when converting your MXa actuator into an MXB. I would recommend running the actuator either fully open or fully closed before converting. In this video, I will be running the valve fully shut before removing power to the MXA. To safely convert the MXA to the MXB, we need to remove power. Consult with your electricians on proper methods of securing power. The setup seen here has an off button as well as an off switch. As an additional precaution, I've also removed the plug from the wall and put a lock on the plug to avoid anyone from coming by and powering up the unit. There are 4 bolts that secure the terminal block cover to the unit. Use your 6mm Allen wrench to remove the cover. Once the bolts have been removed, use caution pulling the terminal block cover off as a vacuum is created and there will be suction holding the cover on. As an additional precaution, to ensure there is no voltage present, you should remove the main power terminal guard to expose the main power leads. To do this, remove the 2 small Phillips head screws at the ends of the voltage guard. Using your multimeter, check each main power phase to phase as well as each phase to ground. Make sure your meter is set to read AC voltage. You should be reading 0. If you are not, check with your electrician to make sure power is secured before continuing. There are also 4 bolts that secure the ACP cover to the housing. To remove this cover, you should loosen and remove the 4 bolts that hold this cover on. You'll notice that the new cover bolt is longer than the MXA cover bolt. This is because the MXB cover has a thicker shoulder than the MXA. When you remove the cover, there will be 4 screws that secure the main board to the cover. You will need to loosen these screws to remove the main board from the ACP cover. When removing the cover, use caution as there will be a bit of a vacuum. Do not let the cover hang by the cables and wires. Rather, support the cover with one hand and loosen the 4 screws that secure the main board with your other hand. Once all 4 screws have been loosened, you can lower the cover and the main board should come out. Once the main board has been taken out of the cover, you should take the 4 screws that secure the main board to the cover and set those aside for the new main board. Next, we will disconnect all of the wires from the main board. These can be disconnected in any order. We will be removing the encoder cable, the thermistor harness, the relay harness, the digital input harness, as well as our power ribbon cable. This is our MXB main board. In order to properly convert from MXA to MXB, you will need to make sure that you plug all cables and Molex connectors in properly. Let's start with the motor thermistor at J5, which is a red 2-pin connector. Moving in a clockwise direction, our next connection is towards the bottom at J4. This is a blue 18-pin Molex connector, which is used for our digital inputs. The next Molex connection is a blue flat 4-pin connector at J18. This is for an uninterrupted power supply, or UPS for short. This will allow the user to supply an external 12 or 24 volt DC power supply to keep the electronics powered in the event of a main power loss. Finally, our last Molex connection is the yellow 12-pin Molex connector. This is for our relays. This concludes all of the Molex harness connections to the main board. However, we have 2 ribbon cable connections. Our first ribbon cable is our 10-pin ribbon cable, which plugs in at 3 o'clock. This ribbon flows away from the center of the board. Orientation is critical. Before plugging this in, make sure that the retention clips in the connector are not interfering with the pins. Lastly, we have the large 20-pin ribbon cable, which plugs in at 9 o'clock and flows towards the center of the main board. Again, there are retention clips that secure this, so before plugging in the cable, make sure they aren't blocking the connection. Let's install our new main board. Grab your 4 mainboard screws, the new MXB cover, and a Phillips head screwdriver and head back to the unit to install the mainboard into the cover. Just like when we took the old mainboard out of the old cover, the new mainboard and new cover are equipped with the same 4 tapped holes to allow the mainboard to be secured to the cover. Carefully install these screws to secure the mainboard to the cover. Once all of the screws are snug, make sure all of your wires are out of the way so you don't risk pinching them, and carefully install the cover on the housing. You should be able to wedge the cover to the housing so it will hold itself long enough for you to grab 2 of your cover bolts. Due to the vacuum you're creating, the cover is going to be difficult to put on, so you may need to use your body to help you push the cover on evenly. Before doing this, get your bolt ready by placing it on the end of your Allen wrench so that when the cover is pulled in tight, you can start the bolt on one of the 4 corners. Once one bolt is started, Start a second bolt in the hole across from it. Slowly work the cover on by turning each bolt 2 to 3 turns at a time. Snug these 2 bolts and then install the remaining bolts. Reinstall the voltage guard that was removed earlier. To do this, simply line up the guard and get one screw started. Install the remaining screw and then check to make sure both screws are tight. This protects the user from main power voltage in the event that the terminal block cover is removed while power is applied. One trick that can be used when installing the terminal block cover is to remove one of the pipe plugs where the conduit entries are. This allows the air to escape when you push the terminal block cover on. Carefully install the terminal block cover so that you don't place it in a bind. Due to the design of the flame path, once the cover is installed, you can line up the bolt holes and not worry about the cover falling off. Grab your 4 bolts and install them on the cover. If you removed a pipe plug, do not forget to reinstall said plug when you are finished installing the cover. Now that the terminal block cover is reinstalled, we're ready to apply power to the unit. Remove the tags and locks and restore power to the unit. Once power is applied, you should see the lights come on and the display light up. As you can see, navigating the menu is very easy. Simply scroll the middle knob clockwise or counterclockwise to change your selection, and then toggle the right knob open or select to accept, or close back to go backwards. For this particular unit, I'm setting it as an MX05, 230 volt, 60 Hz frequency, 40 RPM, and then I'm plugging in the unit serial number. At the end of this, a summary screen will appear. Make sure that all of your selections match the unit nameplate before toggling select. Once this is complete, you can toggle select and the unit will apply these settings and reboot. Now we need to set our limits. While doing this, it's a good idea to check your close direction and make sure it matches. Our standard configuration is clockwise to close. Depending on your valve, you need to check your seating preference and make sure it's set for position seating or torque seating in both the close and open directions. Finally, we'll set our limits. Remember how we ran the valve all the way closed before the conversion? Well, now we can go into the close position limit menu and accept the limit where it is. Our close limit is now set. We don't need to turn the red knob or run the unit closed since the valve is already physically shut. All we need to do is go to the open position limit menu. It will say switch to local, move to open, switch back to stop, and then select OK. We can put the red knob in local and run the unit open with the black knob. The unit will only open while you hold the knob in the open position. Do not run the actuator with the motor into the valve seat. Declutch the unit when you get close and run it the rest of the way with the hand wheel. When you get the limit set, turn the red knob back to stop and toggle the black knob to select. You can now back out of the menu and it will apply the settings and reboot. Once the unit has rebooted, you should check to make sure that the limits are good and that there are no alarms present. Check the close limit first. Once the unit closes all the way, verify the open limit. If no alarms are present, your MXB is ready for operation.